What inspired you to find pharma?
Very, very interesting question. And in all honesty, I was working as an occupational therapist at the time, and I wanted to make a difference in healthcare, but I also wanted to be working in an environment where my ability to earn and my ability to learn was directly, incrementally related to what I put into my career. And I found as an occupational therapist working in the public sector, tenure was all that could determine that, not my actual skills and inputs.
Frustrating.
Yeah.
I feel you. Being a pharmacist, exact same.
That's right.
So yeah.
So it's really a matter of combining my love of wanting to make a difference in healthcare, but also to have the experiences and the personal goals that I aspire to.
Yeah. Can you run us through what is the difference between medical devices and pharma?
Both really address a patient problem, so I think that's key to note. A couple of things are different. If I think back to my time in medical devices and also recruiting for medical devices roles, there's some very distinct differences when it comes to skills. So if you're in medical devices sales, the skills that are really, really important are the technical skills, understanding product specifications, understanding the technicality of actually, for example, implanting a device. So it's not unusual for a medical devices salesperson to be trained in theatre, as an example. Whereas in pharmaceutical sales, it's more about understanding pharmacology, pharmacodynamics, therapy areas, those kinds of things. Very, very different skills when it comes to understanding the product. But I think the thing that both roles have in common is, do you have the ability to understand what problem are you solving for? And do you have those strong communication skills?
Yeah.
I think those are the things that are important regardless of the role. And the other thing that's different is your customer base. So with medical devices, you're often working with surgeons, nurses, hospital administrators, whereas in pharmaceutical sales, it's prescribers, right? So that might be GP specialists, nurses, you name it. The sales cycle with medical devices is often a lot longer, especially if you think about some of the high-end, really expensive medical devices that might cost.
Robots.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That might cost millions. So your sales cycle is very, very long, or it could be very long in medical devices.
Yeah.
Some rudimentary differences.
Yeah, and I hear the pay can potentially be better if you're selling those big robots.
That's right, it can. One of the other things to think about is many medical devices role, you're on call 24/7, especially if you're working in trauma medicine. So there's a price to be paid for that as well.
Yeah. How was pharmaceutical sales different in South Africa versus here in Australia?
And this question really took me back to, well, it's actually not about the product, it's about the system. There's some key differences between South Africa and Australia. I think firstly in terms of access to medicine, South Africa has a dual access system, either private or public, and in essence you either have the money to pay for healthcare or you don't. When it comes to funding, in South Africa, with a population of about 60 million people, only about 5% are taxpayers. So compared to Australia with about 30 million people and about 80% are taxpayers. In Australia we have Medicare, which is a healthcare for all system. So the funding becomes an access issue as well. And then in terms of infrastructure and resources, health outcomes, things like HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, infant mortality, maternal mortality, these are some real challenges in South Africa. And in terms of governance and policy, it's worlds apart, where in South Africa it's a key focus on primary health care and access to antiretrovirals for HIV/AIDS pandemic, versus Australia where it's about, we think about what's the sustainability of our Medicare healthcare approach or healthcare system. So I would always say to anyone looking to get into the healthcare sales industry, go beyond the product and think about what's the environment in which your patient and your healthcare provider is needing to live and work, because that'll give you a sense of, well, what are some of the real challenges